I just thought it'd be quite good to have a little bit of time of devotional and a time to share some thoughts that might be helpful. And the first thing I want to do is just read something from Andrew Murray's book, The True Vine. Andrew Murray was a real amazing guy, a real classic Christian author, and he comes out with some beautiful thoughts in this little book. And I want to read a prayer that he prays here. As the Father loved me, so have I loved you. He's quoting from John 15. And this is what he says. Dear Lord, I'm only beginning to apprehend how exactly the life of the vine is to be that of the branch too. Thou art the vine, because the Father loved thee and poured his love through thee. And so thou lovest me, and my life as branch is to be like thine, a receiving and a giving out of heavenly love. He talks about the flow there of how life flows through the vine. That sap, that life is flowing through, and how connected into God we find our place, we find our fulfillment, we find we connect into his purposes, his flow of what he's doing. And just looking at this verse here, 1 John 4:16 says, God is love, and he who abides in love abides in God, and God abides in him. God is love, and he who abides in love abides in God, and God abides in him. And Andrew Murray says this in comment to this verse: the best and most wonderful word in heaven is love, for God is love. And the best and most wonderful word in the inner chamber must also be love, for the God who meets us there is love. God brings us to that intimate, close relationship of love, and that encounter with him means that we draw into his love, we get connected. There's an intimacy of closeness to his heart, and whenever people encounter God in a very special way, it does something. It brings them into a relationship. It brings them into a deeper connection, a transformation in their lives, and ways in which they discover that God is love, and how he sets them free and brings them into his purpose and favour. I've been sometimes dipping into this lovely book. I just put it up there. It's called Tenacious. And it's lots and lots of stories, and it's by some friends of mine called Transform Europe Network. I really recommend them. They're a lovely charity, and they work with many people across Eastern Europe particularly. And it's just a book packed full of stories of people's lives that have been changed by the power of God in incredible ways. And it's really, really worth looking at. So, when God works powerfully in people's lives and transforms them, there's fruit. There's something that happens, and it seems to spill over, and it seems to multiply, and something happens that can explode sometimes through their life if they allow God to be flowing through them and flowing through their lives. And that was the case with the preacher John Wesley as well. So John Wesley was really passionate about doing the right thing and pursuing holiness, but there's something that happened with him when he had an encounter. His heart was strangely warmed, it says. He was at a service in Aldersgate in London, and there's a beautiful memorial to that at the Museum of London, where it shows a little page from his journal. Talks about this moment when his heart was strangely warmed, and he really understood that depth of reality of God's love for him, this personal encounter that then started to change the face of Britain in his day in incredible ways. And one of those sites that are near to where we live, Bristol, is a place called Hannam Mount, and then also he spoke at another place called Rose Green, and some of these places, they had incredible moments when loads of people gathered and big crowds, and he had lots of contention sometimes at times as well, but really significant, amazing opportunities to share with people, and such a courage as well, that he got out there in the wider public sphere, a time when he began to be excluded from speaking indoors in buildings. Isn't that like today, you know, where actually, well, if some doors are closed for us, maybe there's other opportunities to spread abroad God's love and see what he wants to do amongst us in an incredible way and in a much wider sense. You know, perhaps the internet is that big public open space for us, you know, that we could take advantage of, you know, particularly. And thinking particularly of the great preacher Spurgeon, who did have a big building, but also he spoke in what was considered very secular venues as well, and that was quite unusual at that time. But he was a speaker at Crystal Palace, the Crystal Palace that was in South London, these other places which were, you know, the theatres, that sort of stuff, you know, places which people generally didn't imagine that were spots for preachers to be going. It was a bit like, you know, someone holding a meeting in a nightclub and all the rest of it. So it's amazing how God can use us as we spread abroad the fragrance of Jesus, and as that life flows through us, then it needs to multiply and spread out to many. So I pray that for us today, that we would be a light on a hill, and that we would be able to spread the good news of the gospel